Ballo Conservatio means dance conservation. And this was a project that was funded by University of Washington's Campus Sustainability Fund. They reached out to the dance program hoping to start a conversation with arts programs on campus. I had worked with Steve Korn, the photographer, in the past, and I thought this would be a perfect idea for us to also create a conversation about campus sustainability with the dancers from the dance program. The images that you will see in our project deal and offer ideas about our overindulgence of natural resources.
So Joe Blake and I first met maybe about 2 years ago. Joe is an amazing dancer, and his involvement with the Chamber Dance Company led me to photograph him for their media purposes at a certain point. Had a great time working together, and shortly after that first session that we did for the Chamber Dance Company, Joe and I decided to collaborate and just do some new images. And when Joe was contacted by the Campus Sustainability Fund, I think the idea popped in his mind. You know, I enjoyed working with Steve and had fun making these cool dance images. Maybe this is something that we could do for this sustainability project.
When I first was considering ideas for this specific project, I was thinking dance performance, a dance video. But it wasn't a substantial medium. It wasn't the medium that is photography. Photography that can be caught images, still images that can be printed over and over again, used for media, used online, used in a gallery as an exhibition that can be moved around, an exhibition that can be toured. And so how does dance work in still images? And the power of dance is that we're physical, we're athletic, we're constantly moving, but it can still be caught in images because we're also storytellers. You can tell from the very tiptoe to all the way to the fingers that we're using all powers of the muscle. We're also creating this story within our face, in the contraction of the body, the reach of the hand. So I think the power is that dance can bring these images. I can't say that other art forms can't do that. You can see that in paintings, you can see that in actors. The thing that's so strong with me is that I've been doing this for so long that I understand the power of the body and how we can intertwine to create this idea of something that is twisted, that is a burden. And I believe that is actually what we've caught in the photos, and I think that's what you'll be able to see in each and every one of the images. And I don't think dancing has to be full body moving all the time. I mean, the power of dance also is the frozen moments. When you see that on stage, there's a power there, there's an intensity, and I think that's also caught in these images and in the photography that Steve has taken. So,
where did the ideas come from? Well, we had, we had a lot of communication. We had a lot of exchange of emails. We talked about what the various resources might be that we would discuss, what kinds of resources we could make compelling images with, because some things, maybe wouldn't lend themselves to an image using dance and that particular, medium or resource. So there was a bit of conversation about that, and this is a collaborative process. We work together talking about these. We spent quite a bit of time with Hannah Wiley, who's the head of the Chamber Dance Company here, and she sort of acted as an advisor in some ways. We got input from her, brainstorming all these different ideas. We made sketches. We, actually had a test shoot with the dancers where we had them all come in and we're kind of working with our initial ideas and having them, do various poses and movements and so forth and seeing what they look like. But like with any piece of art, I think it's important to approach it with sort of an open viewpoint, right? And allow it to breathe and allow it to evolve and grow. And that's something that I think happened with just about every one of the images. So with debris, for example, at first I imagined this being sort of this vortex tornado of garbage that these guys were caught up in, right? Sort of swirling around. As we began shooting it and putting it together, in that post-process, I started seeing something different. So it still has, some of the initial elements. We don't have a tornado necessarily, but instead, we just have this feeling of garbage everywhere.
We have overindulged with the plastic and the paper and the cardboard boxes and the compost. And in this image, you will see that the twins, Patrick and Kirby McDermott, our models, are contained within the debris, and that we all are a piece of this. We all have added to it, and the only way to get out of this is for us all to kind of put a hold on it.
This was probably one of the really challenging dance movements. And this is, me not being a dancer, and I'm going, Joe, can we get them to do this? I think it'd be really cool if when they jumped up that they tried to strike this sort of very relaxed, passive pose like they're a piece of paper or cardboard or plastic just sort of being buffeted around. And they did a great job doing that. It's pretty amazing. So when you think about it, when you jump and you have to flex those muscles to get some height and so forth, how do you immediately relax them and get that very passive kind of feeling? I think the guys did a great job, and Joe was instrumental in advising them on how they needed to get that, and making sure that every part of their body was communicating that relaxation. You can't have one tight hand and a relaxed body and so forth, so he was really great at that.
Water. Again, this is that whole idea of overindulgence, and that can be seen in this image. Right away, by our model, Barbie Powers, she's showing that this idea that we are overusing our water resources.
We're obviously very dependent upon oil for our energy needs in the country and around the world, and that in many ways it's very oppressive. It affects our politics, it affects our pocketbooks, it affects our air quality, it affects all these different things. So in many ways we are being very sort of oppressed by our dependence upon oil. And so that was what we wanted to sort of communicate with this image. And so as I sort of thought more and more about it, I liked the idea of just having sort of a spot of oil poured over Laura, right? And that feeling like she's trying to push herself out of it, but she's, again, being sort of suppressed and oppressed by it. So that was sort of the philosophy and idea behind that.
Erosion is this idea, again, because we've overindulged with the water, we're taking away from our own resources, and what we're left with are barren lands, barren trees, barren soil that cannot take care of any of the vegetation that we need to survive.
Erosion was probably the easiest image for us to do, and this was something I really left Joe to figure out how to make this, crackled kind of effect, and he explored it, and I think he used flour and baking soda and water and a hairdryer and created this great crackled kind of quality. And what I like about it is the way that it sort of runs across his body. So, his head has it, and then the erosion sort of gradually sort of disappears as it goes down into his body. And so it's very metaphoric, right? It's a metaphor for the planet, and erosion on the planet, and erosion of soil and so forth. So paper, again, it's something I think we've become pretty good about recycling, especially here in Seattle. Seattle is noted for our strong recycling programs, and I'm sure there's plenty of room to grow and develop and evolve in that regard. But the paper comes from somewhere, right? And so I think that image very much graphically demonstrates the idea that Joe's jumping in the air. He's holding this long piece of beautifully refined paper that came from a tree, and we're cutting down trees. And forests, they can be replanted, but we don't have a great record of that. They are finite. And they're an incredibly valuable resource in our country. They affect other elements like erosion and so forth. Tree lines are important for us to have so that we don't lose all of our topsoil and so forth. So the idea of having this big piece of paper and making that next step that it comes from somewhere, I think is very important. Yeah, so smog. This was an image that definitely evolved, and it actually was part of a third session we did. We had another idea initially that that just wasn't really coming together. We shot it. I didn't really like it as I played with it and thought that we could come up with something more compelling. And so I went online and I started looking for images of smog. I saw some images of people just living their everyday lives in cities like in China, cities in Mexico and so forth that have real problems with air pollution, to the point that many people are wearing these face masks on an everyday basis. And I like the idea of, well, I don't like the idea, but I thought of the idea that, maybe 20 years from now, our planet, if we don't change the way things are going, may find itself in a situation where we go see a dance performance and the ballerinas, the dancers and so forth are wearing these kinds of masks while they perform, and that's just, the status quo. That's just the everyday life. They're out there doing beautiful things and dancing Swan Lake, but they're all wearing these masks because the air quality has become so poor.
Plastic is us caught up in the plastic that we have created. This idea that we are trying to get out of our own mess and our own madness. And what has happened is the plastic is confining.
Okay, so the image of the earth is another one that sort of evolved over time. We are all of the earth, right? The minerals that are in the ground give nutrition to our food, which gives nutrition to us and so forth. There's a cycle of our bodies going back to the ground. So we have this connection to the planet, and I think that piece really is about that connection to the planet and the importance of our relationship with the planet, that it is sustainability, right? It is exactly what we're trying to sustain. It is our own life that is at stake, and that source of life for us is our planet. And so I kind of wanted to create something, or we wanted to create something that sort of metaphorically suggests that relationship between humans and the earth.
We are able to start this conversation with one another and really talk about what it is that's sustainable. Why are we doing this, and how can we keep this going? And I think this is a great way for this project to keep growing and intensifying and seeing where Ballo Conservatio can go. So I'm really excited and proud and thankful for this project.